The emergency alarms blared through the massive halls of the Galactic Alliance headquarters. Red lights flashed across the polished marble floors as hundreds of alien representatives rushed to reach the main chamber. Something terrible had happened, and everyone knew it. Inside the grand circular chamber, Admiral James Walker of Earth's Space Command stood quietly in the corner, watching the chaos unfold. He hadn't been invited to speak. Humans rarely were. Earth had only joined the Alliance 3 years ago, and most advanced species still saw them as newcomers, barely worth notice. The Alliance president, a tall being with silver skin, raised his hands for silence. The chamber grew quiet, except for the constant beeping of emergency transmissions. "The outer defense fleet is gone," he announced, his voice shaking. "All 50,000 ships, destroyed in less than 6 hours." The chamber erupted in screams and shouts. Many representatives fell back into their seats, while others began arguing loudly. The outer defense fleet was the strongest military force ever created, with technology far beyond anything Earth possessed. If it was gone. Admiral Walker stepped forward, breaking protocol. "What destroyed them?" he asked loudly, his voice cutting through the noise. The president looked at him, probably surprised that a human dared to speak. But now wasn't the time for proper procedure. He pressed a button, and a hologram appeared in the center of the room. The image showed strange crystal-like shapes moving through space. They looked like shards of glass, each one bigger than Earth's largest ships. As the representatives watched, one crystal touched a planet. Within seconds, the entire world cracked apart, its pieces dissolving into energy that the crystal absorbed. "We call them Void Hunters," the president explained. "They appeared from deep space 3 days ago. Our scientists think they're ancient beings that consume worlds for energy. The outer fleet's weapons." He paused. "The hunters simply absorbed every energy blast. Nothing worked against them." Walker studied the hologram carefully. "How many worlds have we lost?" 3 major systems are already gone. The Centauri Empire fell first, 10 billion dead. Then the Rigel colonies, and now the outer fleet. The president's silver skin had turned almost gray. "The hunters are moving faster than we expected. Much faster." An alien representative stood up, his blue scales reflecting the red emergency lights. "What about our evacuation ships? We need to move our people." The evacuation fleet was with the Outer Defense Force. Another representative shouted. "It's gone too." More shouting filled the chamber. Walker watched as the mighty Galactic Alliance, which had looked down on Earth for so long, began to fall apart in fear. The hologram updated, showing the Void Hunters' path. Walker's heart stopped for a moment. They were heading directly toward human space. "Earth is in their path," he said quietly, but somehow his words carried across the chamber. The room grew silent again. "Yes," the president admitted. "We estimate they will reach your solar system in 3 months. I'm sorry, but there's nothing we can do. Our strongest weapons are useless." Walker stood straighter, his military training taking over. "Then we'll find weapons that work. Earth has faced impossible odds before." A few representatives laughed, the sound bitter and scared. "Your primitive technology," one asked, "when our advanced weapons did nothing." "Sometimes the old ways work best," Walker replied calmly. He turned to leave the chamber, his mind already working on plans. Earth needed to know what was coming. As he reached the door, he heard the president speak again. "The alliance is broken. Every species for themselves now. May whatever gods you believe in have mercy on us all." Walker didn't stop walking. He had calls to make, preparations to start. Earth would not go quietly into the night. They would find a way to fight, no matter what it took. The most advanced civilizations in the galaxy have failed. Now it was humanity's turn to try. 2 months after the fall of the Outer Defense Fleet, Earth had changed. The skies over every major city were filled with construction platforms. Massive defense stations hung in orbit like metal clouds, built from torn-apart cargo ships and mining platforms. Inside the newly built Earth Defense Command Center, Admiral Walker stared at the main screen showing Earth's solar system. Red dots marked the Void Hunters' advance. They were getting closer. "Sir," said Colonel Anna Reed, walking into the command center. "The last group of Alliance refugees just arrived. 300 ships, mostly civilians." Walker nodded. Earth had opened its doors to anyone fleeing the Hunters, much to the surprise of the alien species who had once looked down on humanity. "Get them behind Mars. The defense platforms there will protect them." "There's something else," Anna said, her voice dropping lower. Their ships picked up new readings. The Hunters, they're moving even faster now. "We have 2 weeks, not 4. Walker's face hardened, but he didn't show fear. He pressed a button on his command station. "All stations, this is Admiral Walker. Operation Line in the Sand begins now. I repeat, Operation Line in the Sand is active." Across the solar system, humanity's preparations kicked into high gear. Around Saturn, hundreds of ships began moving into position, using the planet's rings as cover. Near Jupiter, massive mining platforms transformed into weapon stations, their drills replaced with giant guns. "Admiral," a voice called out, "the Alliance Council is asking to speak with you." Walker almost laughed. The mighty council, which had run away when the Hunters first appeared, now wanted to talk. "Put them through." The main screen showed the remaining council members. The president's silver skin had dulled with stress. "Admiral Walker," he said, "our scientists have analyzed Earth's position. Your solar system's unique magnetic fields and gravitational patterns make it a natural choke point. If the Hunters can be stopped anywhere, it's there." "We know," Walker replied simply. "That's why we're making our stand here." "With primitive weapons?" another council member asked, trying not to sound doubtful. Walker pointed to the screen showing Earth's defenses. "The Hunters absorb energy weapons, so we're not using any. Every gun we've built fires solid metal. Old railway technology, scaled up. Mass drivers that shoot chunks of rock and iron. Simple, physical ammunition that can't be absorbed." The council members looked shocked. "You're going back to basic physics." "Sometimes the old ways work best," Walker said, repeating what he'd told them months ago. "We've also noticed something about the Hunters' flight patterns. They follow energy signatures, like moths to a flame. So we're going to give them the biggest flame they've ever seen." He switched the screen to show Jupiter's moons. "We've turned Europa into bait. Its ice hides thousands of nuclear devices. When the Hunters come to feed, they'll find more than they expected." The council was silent for a long moment. Finally, the president spoke again. "You understand that if Earth falls, there's nowhere else left. You're the last line of defense for the entire galaxy." Walker looked around the command center, where humans worked side by side with alien refugees, all focused on the coming battle. "Then we better not fall," he said firmly. "Humanity stood alone before. But this time, we're not really alone, are we?" He ended the call and turned to Anna. "Get me a line to all ships and stations." When she nodded, he took a deep breath. "This is Admiral Walker to all forces. In 2 weeks, we face an enemy that has never known defeat. They've destroyed the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy. Now they're coming for Earth." He paused, looking at the determined faces around him. "But Earth is where they'll find something different. Here, they'll find humanity. And humanity doesn't know how to give up. All stations, battle positions. We hold the line here or nowhere. Walker out." Across the solar system, humans and aliens together prepared for the coming storm. The greatest battle in galactic history was about to begin, and humanity would lead the charge. The massive hangar bay of the lunar base buzzed with activity. Hundreds of workers moved between ships. Both human and alien vessels lined up in neat rows. The sound of welding and hammering echoed through the space as old weapons were stripped away and new ones installed. Captain Mike Turner watched from the control room as his crew attached a huge metal cannon to an Alliance battleship. The alien ship's elegant lines now looked rough and unfinished, but pretty ships wouldn't win this war. The Alliance crew thinks we're crazy, said his assistant, Robert, looking through the window. They keep saying these weapons are too simple to work. Mike smiled. Simple is exactly what we need. Show me the latest test results. Robert handed him a tablet. On the screen, a video played showing a test fire from one of the new weapons. A massive chunk of metal, moving at incredible speed, tore through a test target made of the same crystal material as the Void Hunters. Perfect, Mike said. How many ships have we converted so far? 200 done, 300 to go. We're working around the clock. But Robert hesitated. Sir, we're running out of metal. We've stripped every abandoned building and ship we could find. Mike was about to respond when the emergency lights flashed. Admiral Walker's voice came through the speakers. All personnel, this is not a drill. Long-range sensors have detected the first wave of Void Hunters entering the Kuiper Belt. I repeat, they're entering the Kuiper Belt. We have less than 48 hours. The hangar erupted in controlled chaos. Workers moved faster, their movements urgent but precise. Mike grabbed his tools and headed down to the floor. He wouldn't ask his people to work while he watched. Sir, Robert called after him. What about the metal shortage? Mike turned back. Get me a line to Mining Station 7. Tell them to redirect the latest asteroid. We'll break it up here and use it for ammo. And find Dr. Reed. We need his sonic weapon prototypes now. Hours passed like minutes. Mike worked alongside his crew, his hands dirty with grease and metal shavings. Every ship they finished moved out immediately, heading to its battle position. Near the end of his shift, he felt a tap on his shoulder. It was Dr. Tom Reed, looking tired but excited. Captain, you need to see this, the scientist said. In a small testing chamber, Dr. Reed had set up a piece of crystal similar to the Void Hunter's material. He pressed a button, and a high-pitched sound filled the room. The crystal vibrated, then cracked. The resonance frequency, Dr. Reed explained. Every crystal has one. Hit it just right, and it shatters. I've modified the sonic cannons we use for mining. They're not very strong, but if we combine them with your kinetic weapons... Mike's eyes lit up. The physical impact creates cracks, and the sonic waves shatter them completely, Dr. Reed finished. It's not elegant, but it's perfect, Mike said. He grabbed his radio. Admiral Walker, this is Captain Turner. You need to see this immediately. Within an hour, Walker stood in the test chamber, watching another demonstration. His face showed the first real hope anyone had seen in weeks. How quickly can we add these sonic weapons to our ships? The Admiral asked. 24 hours for a basic version, Mike answered. We'll have to mount them close to the kinetic cannons for maximum effect. Walker nodded. Do it. And Captain, good work. Sometimes the best solutions are the simplest ones. As Mike gathered his crew to begin the modifications, he looked out a window at Earth hanging in space. Somewhere out there, the Void Hunters were coming, thinking they would find another easy target. Instead, they would find humanity at its best, creative, determined, and ready to fight with everything they had. The next 48 hours would decide the fate of not just Earth, but the entire galaxy, and Earth's defenders would make every second count. In the depths of Mars Base 1, Dr. Tom Reed hadn't slept in 36 hours. The testing chamber around him hummed with energy as he made final adjustments to the combined sonic-kinetic weapon system. Time was running out. Test number 47. He spoke into his recorder, increasing sonic frequency to match the crystal's natural resonance. Behind thick safety glass, observers from Earth Command and the Alliance watched. Among them stood Admiral Walker and Captain Turner, their faces tense with anticipation. Previous tests had shown promise, but they needed something better than just promise now. The test chamber held a large crystal shard, recovered from the wreckage of an Alliance world. It glowed faintly in the dim light, beautiful but deadly. Dr. Reed activated the sequence. First came the kinetic strike, A metal slug fired at incredible speed. It hit the crystal, creating a web of tiny cracks. Immediately after, the sonic weapon fired, sending invisible waves of sound through the air. The crystal shuddered. The cracks spread wider. And then, with a sound like breaking glass, it shattered into thousands of pieces. Time to complete destruction. 2.3 seconds, Dr. Reed announced, trying to keep his voice steady despite his excitement. That's our fastest yet. The observation room erupted in cheers. Admiral Walker stepped to the intercom. Well done, Doctor, but can we scale this up? The Void Hunters are much larger than our test sample. Already done, sir, Reed replied, pulling up diagrams on his screen. We've modified the sonic mining equipment from Jupiter's moons. Each one is 50 times more powerful than this test unit, combined with the kinetic weapons Captain Turner developed. He was interrupted by an alarm. Red lights flashed throughout the base. A voice came over the speakers. All personnel, battle stations. Void Hunters have passed Neptune's orbit. Repeat, enemy forces have passed Neptune. The room exploded into action. Admiral Walker began barking orders into his radio. Get those sonic weapons installed now. All ships to defensive positions. Civilian ships behind Mars. This is not a drill. Dr. Reed gathered his data tablets, hands shaking slightly. 30 years of studying mining technology, of being called wasteful for researching better ways to break rocks in space. Now it might save humanity. Captain Turner appeared at his side. Doctor, we need you on the command ship. If those frequencies need adjusting during battle. I'm ready. Reed nodded. They rushed through the corridors of the base, passing crews running to their posts. Through the windows, he could see ships rising from Mars's surface, their new weapons gleaming under the distant sun. In the shuttle to the command ship, Reed watched Mars fall away below them. The red planet's surface was dotted with defense platforms and weapon installations. Beyond it, barely visible, stood the rings of Saturn, where the main fleet waited. Look, Turner pointed through the window. Far in the distance, past Saturn's rings, something glinted. The light seemed wrong somehow, like broken glass catching the sun. The Void Hunters, Reed whispered. He'd seen them in videos, but in person, they were beautiful and terrifying. Living crystals, some as large as cities, moving through space with impossible grace. The shuttle docked with the command ship. On the bridge, Admiral Walker stood before a massive screen showing the approaching enemy. Doctor, Walker acknowledged him. Your weapons are our best hope. If they don't work, they'll work, Reed said with more confidence than he felt. The math is solid. The physics is basic. Even the hunters can't break the laws of nature. Walker nodded slowly. Then let's hope nature is on our side today. Because there they come. On the screen, the first wave of Void Hunters accelerated toward Saturn. The battle that would decide humanity's fate was about to begin. And all their hopes rested on the shoulders of a mining engineer who had never given up studying the simple science of breaking rocks. Admiral Walker stood on the bridge of Earth's command ship, hidden within Saturn's rings. Ice and rock fragments drifted past the windows, providing perfect cover for the fleet. The massive display screen showed hundreds of red dots approaching. The first wave of Void Hunters. All ships, maintain position, he ordered. Remember your training. Wait for them to get closer. Dr. Reed worked at his station, monitoring the sonic weapon frequencies. Captain Turner stood ready at the weapons control. No one spoke. The only sound was the quiet beeping of computers tracking the enemy's approach. The Void Hunters moved like a swarm of giant crystal shards, their surfaces reflecting starlight. The largest ones were the size of small moons. As they got closer, everyone could see the strange energy patterns flowing through their crystalline bodies. They're following the energy trail we left, Turner reported, moving straight toward the bait. Walker nodded. They had scattered nuclear-powered decoys throughout Saturn's rings, leading the hunters into their trap. Distance to nearest hunter. 20,000 kilometers in closing, answered a crew member. 15,000, 10,000. Weapons range in 30 seconds, Turner announced. His hand hovered over the firing control. Walker took a deep breath. All ships, prepare to fire on my mark. Remember, kinetic strikes first, then sonic pulse. Time them exactly as we practiced. The Void Hunters entered the outer rings of Saturn. They moved through the ice and rock like sharks through water, their crystal bodies glowing brighter as they sensed the energy sources hidden in the rings. Now, Walker commanded. The space around Saturn erupted. Hundreds of ships fired at once, launching massive metal slugs at incredible speeds. The kinetic rounds struck the nearest hunters, creating webs of cracks across their crystal surfaces. Before the hunters could react, the sonic weapons fired. The combined effect was devastating. 3 of the smaller hunters shattered completely, their fragments spinning away into space. Direct hits, Turner shouted. The weapon combination works. But the Void Hunters weren't defeated so easily. The larger ones changed direction, moving with impossible speed. Energy beams shot from their surfaces, destroying several human ships instantly. Evasive action, Walker ordered. Stay in the rings. Use the debris for cover. The battle became chaos. Ships darted through Saturn's rings, firing at the hunters while trying to avoid their deadly energy beams. Every time they destroyed one hunter, 2 more seemed to take its place. Admiral, Dr. Reed called out. They're adapting to the sonic frequency. I need to recalibrate. Walker watched as their weapons became less effective. The hunters were learning, changing their crystal structure to resist the sonic attacks. A massive hunter, bigger than any they'd seen before, emerged from the swarm. All ships fall back to secondary positions, Walker commanded. Concentrate fire on the large one. Dozens of ships fired at once. Kinetic rounds slammed into the giant hunter, creating huge cracks. The sonic weapons fired, but the hunter didn't shatter. Instead, it released a pulse of energy that vaporized part of Saturn's rings. Damage report, Walker demanded. We've lost 30 ships, Turner replied grimly. The rings are breaking up in Sector 7. Our cover is disappearing. Dr. Reed worked frantically at his station. Give me 2 minutes. I can find their new resonance frequency. But they didn't have 2 minutes. More hunters poured through the gap in the rings, their energy beams cutting through human ships. The defensive line was breaking. Walker grabbed his radio. This is Admiral Walker to Earth Command. The Saturn line is compromised. Activate Operation Thunderstrike. I repeat, activate Operation Thunderstrike. As the command ship retreated toward Mars, Walker watched the massive swarm of Void Hunters advance. The first battle was ending. But the war for Earth's survival was just beginning. The Earth's moon burned. Massive craters covered its surface where Void Hunter energy beams had struck. The defensive platforms that once protected it were now just floating debris. On the dark side of the moon, the last civilian evacuation ships were launching, racing for the safety of Mars. In the Lunar Command Center, Admiral Walker watched the main screen with tired eyes. They had been fighting for 3 days straight. The Saturn line had fallen. Jupiter's defenses had collapsed. Now the hunters were here, at humanity's doorstep. Status report, he demanded, his voice rough from lack of sleep. Captain Turner, his uniform covered in dust from the last hunter attack, checked his tablet. We've lost 60% of the fleet. The sonic weapons. He paused, looking at Dr. Reed. The scientist looked worse than any of them. They keep changing their crystal structure, Reed explained. Every time we find a frequency that works, they adapt within hours. We can't break them fast enough. A massive explosion rocked the command center. Warning lights flashed as another section of the moon base collapsed. Sir, Turner said urgently, we need to evacuate. The base won't survive another direct hit. Walker nodded slowly. Begin evacuation procedures. Get everyone to the backup command ship. He turned to the communications officer. Any word from the Alliance Council? Yes, sir. There, the officer hesitated. They're recommending full retreat. They say Earth is lost, just like their worlds. They want us to save who we can and run. The room fell silent. Everyone looked at Walker, waiting for his response. He stood straighter, his face hardening with determination. No, he said firmly. We are not running. Earth is our home. If we run now, the hunters will follow us forever. There won't be anywhere left to hide. He turned to Dr. Reed. Doctor, you said the hunters are drawn to energy sources. Reed nodded. Yes. The bigger the energy signature, the more they're attracted to it. That's why they keep attacking our power plants first. And what's the biggest energy source humans have ever created? Reed's eyes widened as he understood. Nuclear weapons. But sir, we already tried nuclear strikes. They just absorb the energy. We're not going to use them as weapons, Walker interrupted. We're going to use them as bait. He pressed a button on his command console. This is Admiral Walker. Initiate Operation Thunderstrike. Authorization code. Walker Alpha 70. Somewhere deep in the moon base, computers came to life. Hidden doors opened in launch bays that hadn't been used since the last World War. Earth's entire nuclear arsenal, thousands of warheads that had been moved to the moon, began preparing for launch. Sir, Turner said, if we use all our nukes as bait, we won't have anything left to fight with. We'll have what we've always had, Walker replied. Our determination, our ingenuity, and our refusal to give up. He looked around the room. Every alien race we've met thinks humans are primitive because we still use physical weapons, because we never fully embraced energy technology. Well, today that's going to save us all. Another explosion shook the base. Through the reinforced windows, they could see massive crystal shapes moving past the moon, heading toward Earth. The Void Hunters had arrived in force. Everyone to emergency transport, Turner shouted. Move. As they ran through the collapsing corridors, Walker activated his personal communicator. This is Admiral Walker to all Earth forces. The time has come. Execute Operation Thunderstrike. Draw them in close. Make them think they've won. And then, he smiled grimly, show them why you never corner a human. Behind them, the moon base began to crumble. Above them, the Void Hunters moved toward Earth like a cloud of deadly glass. The next few hours would decide the fate of humanity. And James Walker, Admiral of Earth's last defense force, was about to gamble everything on one final desperate plan. Earth hung in space like a blue jewel, seemingly peaceful despite the battle raging around it. Thousands of nuclear missiles streaked away from the moon, their engines burning bright against the darkness. The Void Hunters, sensing the massive energy signatures, turned as one to follow them. From the bridge of the command ship, Admiral Walker watched the plan unfold. Status of the Hunter swarm. They're taking the bait, Captain Turner reported. 80% of the swarm is following the nuclear launches. The rest are still approaching Earth. Dr. Reed worked frantically at his station, surrounded by screens showing frequency calculations. The warheads are broadcasting the energy signature we designed. The hunters think they're about to get the biggest meal of their lives. Walker nodded grimly. Everything depended on timing now. All ships, maintain position. Wait for my signal. The nuclear missiles split into predetermined groups, creating a complex web of energy signatures. The Void Hunters followed, their crystal bodies glowing brighter with anticipation. They didn't notice the small, silent ships hiding in Earth's orbit, waiting. Hunters approaching optimal range, Turner announced. 10,000 kilometers. 5,000. They're starting to absorb the first warheads. The space around Earth lit up as the hunters began consuming the nuclear weapons. Energy flowed through their crystalline bodies, making them shine like new stars. Now, Walker commanded, all ships, execute attack pattern Delta. Fire everything we have. Hundreds of ships emerged from hiding, but instead of running from the hunters, they charged straight toward them. Every ship fired their kinetic weapons at once, targeting the exact spots where the nuclear energy was causing the hunters' crystal structure to vibrate. Sonic weapons at full power, Reed shouted. The energy absorption has changed their resonance frequency exactly as we predicted. The combined effect was devastating. The hunters, their crystal structures already stressed from absorbing so much nuclear energy, couldn't adapt fast enough. The kinetic rounds created massive cracks, and the sonic weapons, tuned to the perfect frequency, shattered them completely. The largest hunter, the one that had led the attack on the moon, exploded into 1,000,000 pieces. The chain reaction spread through the swarm as each destroyed hunter's fragments hit others, creating more cracks for the sonic weapons to exploit. It's working. Turner yelled over the noise of the battle. Their formation is breaking up. Walker gripped his command rail tightly. Press the attack. Don't let them regroup. Human ships darted through the chaos, firing with deadly precision. The remaining hunters tried to flee, but they were caught in their own trap. The nuclear energy they had absorbed made them too unstable to maintain their structure under the assault. "Sir," Reed called out, his voice filled with disbelief. "The surviving hunters. They're retreating. They're actually running away." The bridge crew watched in amazement as the few remaining hunters turned and accelerated away from Earth, leaving behind a field of crystalline debris that sparkled in the sunlight. Walker allowed himself a small smile. "Send word to all ships and stations. The Earth is defended. We held the line." The cheer that went up from the crew echoed through every ship and station around Earth. They had done the impossible. Humanity had stood against the greatest threat the galaxy had ever known, and they had won. Hours later, as cleanup operations began, the Alliance Council sent a message. They wanted to discuss making Earth the new headquarters for galactic defense. They had finally learned what humanity had known all along. Sometimes the simplest solutions were the best ones, and determination could overcome any odds. Admiral Walker stood at his window, watching Earth rotate peacefully below. The Void Hunters had thought they found an easy target, a primitive world that would fall like all the others. Instead, they found humanity at its finest, creative, determined, and unwilling to give up even when all hope seemed lost. "Sir," Turner said from behind him, "the Alliance ships are requesting permission to help with repairs." Walker nodded. "Tell them yes. It's time to rebuild, together." The sun rose over Earth's horizon, shining on a world that still stood proud. Humanity had held the line, and in doing so, they had saved not just themselves, but the entire galaxy. The age of humanity had begun.